Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. I wish to ask a question without notice to our Deputy Prime Minister, who is the Minister of one of the most important assets in our country, which our Prime Minister has just alluded to in his very important response to the Leader of the Opposition. So my question will go to the Deputy Prime Minister with regards to land. Two questions only to the very hardworking Minister for Lands and our Deputy Prime Minister. And thank you. I really believe, Deputy Speaker, that the land issue should be a big issue. And I, before asking the question, would strongly suggest that the Lands Department becomes a central agency because it's one of the most important assets in our country. But before I ask the questions, I want to acknowledge the small children from Abau who are sitting up there on the chamber, and they are here to watch all of us leaders. So I want to acknowledge their presence from a village called Abau Hon. They're here to observe the leaders performing. My questions, the preamble to the questions are related to a very important decision that Cabinet made when the current Minister for Foreign Affairs was Minister for Lands. And as you know, I was Minister for Lands prior to that. And it's an NEC decision NG 70 2019. Now it's 2002. So that very important decision was related to a focus on customary land in our country. Every development, as you and I know, hinges on land, and the Prime Minister rightly alluded to letting our people, encouraging them to go back to the land, because city have not got land. We go back. Our biggest challenge, Deputy Prime Minister, is we really have not yet sorted out the administration and management of customary land in our country. And therefore, that important decision, NG 70 2019, was directed to, bottom line, to unlock the potential that customary land has for nation building. And so my question to the Deputy Prime Minister is if he could inform the House on the progress of the work under a program called National Land Development Program Phase 2, which was the basis of that decision. It recommended 17 recommendations. And one of them, which is the basis of my question, is the development of the customary land legislation on how to administer and how to manage land. The initial efforts that I made while I was Lands Minister, one of them was voluntary registration of customary land. The land summit that the Foreign Minister did when he was Lands Minister was relook at that structure, and this decision provided for that opportunity. So if the Honorable Deputy Prime Minister could inform the Honorable House on the progress of the National Land Development Phase 2, on the instructions given from that decision on progressing the issues of customary land. When could that please provide the report, and also when could we have this bill to be presented on the floor of Parliament? Because I believe that this will empower our landowners big time. The second question is related to a nearby issue, and that is our people around Port Moresby City, particularly the landowners of the city, their land is disappearing very, very fast. For example, the Taurama Valley, Gereka, a lot of that land is already so-called purchased. But under Section 132 of the Land Act, that section says customary land must never be sold. However, it hasn't got the teeth. On the penalties, when a customary landowner from, say, Pari lands a portion or so-called sells a portion of land in Taurama or Gereka, the law really should not recognize that that transaction is a sale of customary land. And so my second question, Deputy Prime Minister, is with the NLDP2 program, would we be in a position to clean the mess up at the Taurama Valley and Gereka, now heading up to Sogeri and going towards Rea Rea? So-called people have bought a piece of customary land in the name of sale, and they have signed certain agreements, but we believe that it's not for sale. Could we clean that up under the National Land Development Program Phase 2? And I believe that the customary land legislation that was directed by that decision that I quoted would be the answer. And Deputy Speaker, if this term of Parliament can solve the issue of customary land, I think it's a great gift when we enter our 50th anniversary in 2025. Thank you, Deputy Speaker.
The Honourable Minister for Lands and Deputy Prime Minister.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I'd like to
Honourable
say...
Deputy Prime Minister, I have other member standing. You,
Speaker, supplementary to that question.
Honourable Member, thank you. No correction, you can ask for supplementary after the Minister reply. So I'll ask the Minister reply, and then if you have a supplementary question related to, then I can give you a chance after the Deputy Prime Minister. So I'll ask the Minister to reply first. Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. And thank you to the Sir Puka Temu, the good member for Abau, for a very, very important question. I think it concerns all of us and throughout Papua New Guinea. Land is the essence and crux of all where we come from. Without land, we are nobody as a person in our traditional society. And customary land is one of the biggest issues that face all of us in Papua New Guinea. And it also is a solution to a lot of our problems also, the economic difficulties we have, any other social issues, because land, as I say, is the underlying crux of the whole issue. In land, we have about 3 to 4%, which is alienated land that belongs to the state, that was acquired a long time ago. We also have freehold land that was acquired a lot by our colonial masters, and most of it sits under the churches that we have it's called freehold land. So with freehold land, the lands minister does not really have any say, or the land department does not really have any say over it until it is brought for transfer or sale, and it is owned in perpetuity by whoever owns a freehold land title. With alienated land, the 3 to 4%, the lands department manages and is involved in the sale, the forfeiture, and that sort of aspect of the land use. For customary land, it gets more and more sensitive and more complicated. Customary land, we have tried to address it, and we're addressing it under the previous NEC edition that the good member for Abau has pointed out, the National Land Development Phase 2, which was approved by NEC and carried out by my previous predecessor, and now carried out by myself and the Lands Department. It is work in progress to try to address the many land issues that we have. Some of the issues that we have part of it is the ILG issues. A lot of the ILG issues, which was started to address the customary land issues, has now been misused. A lot of our ILGs in our rural areas, also educated people or people who go past Lodisla or clan Bliumi, have taken that issue, they have become officials, and they have taken custody of all clan use, no salimos and private ground. And that remains a problem that underlines a lot of the ILG issues. I'm not a fan of the ILG issue, So we are trying under the National Land Development Phase 2 to try to rectify some of this by amending some of those laws regarding to this. We also have the customary land issues, especially in our urban areas, that people sell. And as rightfully the good member for Abau pointed out, you cannot sell land to foreigners. It is a law. But at the same time, let me point it out to everyone, including landowners, that as a Minister for Lands or the Lands Department, we don't own that land. Get out and miplan own him. Get out and ground blow you, Papa, Mama, blow this ground, the clan leaders. Mr. Speaker, Deputy Speaker, time you salim ground, you yet Papa blow ground and you get decision to salim this ground. Now why you all him government get responsible, it's the problem you put him long. So all get out Papa block ground, Adrel or urban centers, once you salim ground, you must realize you do it with your own conscience. No can salim ground blong you lo, pipe kina na 10 kina. Time you sali ground lo pipe kina 10 kina, now you bungi mogra plenty problem come up there. No gan man toki lo sali ground. Government no toki lo salim ground. With the customary land, the easiest way and the easiest solution is for you to approach the lands department. Work with the relevant lands department, and here we have found ways to help you harness your customary land. Let me point out the Tuhava program again, and I give commendations to the people at Roku. Despite the underlying pressures from a lot of people, all Toksali ground, but a group of old people in all Saweman, old men and women, all sit down and they decided that they would not sell the land. So they harnessed 585 hectares of land, and they talked to a developer, and they came and saw us at Lands Department. And it took us 2 years to convert that land, 585 hectares. They did not bow down to the pressures of 5 kina and 10 kina. And they converted that land with the help of the Lands Department, made that traditional land, customary land, bankable. They surrendered that land, and I, as a minister, acquired that land with no money. We had an agreement. We converted that land through the Lands Board. We made 585 hectares become bankable. So time them come up, na paper you come up title, we gave them a 99-year lease. So they used that land with their partners in development. The collateral was the land that they used, and 585 hectares. The land titles was bankable, which came to the tune of 200 million kina, which was their equity, which is bankable to go to the banks. So all Karim Disla Mipla Halbimol, all starting one company where developer want them all papa ground, all put him one them. Now all got Disla bankable title, and now they have formed a partnership, and that company now is developing the Tuhava township and is selling 4,000 subdivided allotments with a state lease on it. 4,000 allotments at 400,000 kina to go into the Port Moresby market equals, and you do the mathematics, 1.6 billion kina. 1.6 billion kina, it goes straight, Lodisla Development Company, want them all Papa ground. They end up equity shareholders for that development. They do not lose their land. This land stop on the mall, na tumuna blol, na stop on the mall. We have reduced the land lease of 5% through the Lands Department because government miplan no spendi 1 toil of buying this ground. Miplan no spendi 1 toil of buying this ground. All we did was plan, work with them in cohesion, albimol processes, albimol subdivision, albimol issue titling. So time people put him this like equity block government go inside because I do not believe that government can run businesses. You may not running business. Let the private sector run business. So MIPLA halbimolo process, law, policy, and then we subdivided it. So now that 4,000 land titles will now be sold to private individuals. That is how they recoup the money at the tune of 1.6 billion kina. That private development company does all the infrastructure, the roads, the ceiling, the subdivisions, the street lights, the sewage, the water, everything, and all that work in. So it takes a load of government. Government does not put in $500 million to develop the infrastructure in there. Because to develop an infrastructure, a plot of land maybe a subdivision allotment of 400 or 600 square meters will cost us, at today's rates, between 80 to 90,000 kina per allotment. That includes the street lights and all the other furniture, drainage systems, sealing the road before you can build some infrastructure for land development. So to answer, Mr. Speaker, back to the very, very good question that the Honorable Puka Temu said, yes, I agree with you. We really need more to help our people. We really need lands to open up a lot more, make it accessible to our people. We need to give them more information on that. So now when I stand in Parliament, I encourage our people, especially in the periphery areas of Port Moresby, the periphery areas of Lae, Madang, Wewak, come forward. We will set up a proper office inside the Lands Department to assist you so that you can harness the wealth you have, which is your own land. So you do not lose it in Tumuna Blue, na Pigini Blue, behind, you not losing for life. Now you misalim all ground go lo block inside lo place blow me to lo lay or papa ground or salim ground lo block lo 5,000 kina, 10,000 kina. They've lost it for life. They've lost it for life. And let me also point out that when you say Customary land cannot be owned by foreigners, yes, that is true. And the law states specifically that you cannot send land to that. But I, as a minister and the Lands Department, cannot control if one plaman salim ground lo na plaman lo like blame. Time all salim ono na kam tok lo mi. Because ground me no control him lo customary land. But moving forward, under the National Land Development Program, we are moving to address that so that the model that we use at Tuhava can be successfully used all over Papua New Guinea. And we are moving in that way today. The Tuhava project that we used was used under existing laws, under the Section 10 of the Lands Act that MIPLA used in existing laws. Now MIPLA put him this law. But we'll fine-tune those existing laws. And Parliament, in this session of Parliament next year, when we have all the amendments done for a lot of our land laws, which are a bit outdated, a bit colonial, we need to change it a little bit, including ownership of land in our urban centers. A lot of it we are losing everywhere. So you make sim this Kamlo Parliament, and then Parliament will be able to assist, amend some of those laws to protect our people and help them harness their wealth inside our cities and urban areas. The other program that we are also doing on, as alluded by the Prime Minister earlier, is that for next year's budget, we are looking at putting 100 to 200 million kina to acquire land on the periphery of our cities so that we can use it to develop some of our areas. Like Tari, for example, if we can buy another 100 hectares or 1,000 hectares on the periphery of Tari so that we can develop commercial areas, industrial factories, so that Taris do not need to move down to Port Moresby. They can stay there, work there. The same with Goilala, the same with WAU. And I've been in talks with the member for WAU to develop the WAU township to make it more accessible that we can harness and have commercial factories, grape growing, and all kinds of them. The more we have in our rural areas, then we try to control the rural-urban drift. It's work in progress, and I can assure our good member for Abau that we will be working on that and continue the good work that you have started and the previous Minister Tachenko has started, the Honorable Tachenko has started. And I promise that we will move that and try to create more value for our land moving forward. That's for question one. Question two, well, I think I've addressed that already. Under the Section 132, yes, I confirm we cannot sell customary land to foreigners. And when we say foreigners, let us bring it into context also. That means the customary lands of Motu Koitabu cannot be sold to another person, cannot be sold to a Morobian, cannot be sold to a guy from Madang or Sipik or Wabek or Kainosam. That also means that in the context of the law. So this is Section 132, meaning people who are from that area alone. Anyone who's outside from the clan or respective area is considered a foreigner. Law, Napla province or Kainosam, but it is actually illegal under the laws of Papua New Guinea now. So big plus something, Mila Toksawel or Papa ground. And I like to reiterate this. The problems you have brought upon by the sale of land, and you play it.
The Honorable Minister and Honorable Deputy Prime Minister, I understand the reply that you give to a question is very important for our nation on matter of issue. We are in the question time session. We still have other members who wish
Thank
to
you.
ask questions. So I would ask you to make your reply.
Final comments. Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. I'll make my final comments. Just a bit of advice to our landowners. Please come and see the lands department. Please knock on sali customary ground because I'm your silent future. Blood tumuna na pingin bli na bayu bringing problem lo you yet. Please wana me imploring you bla. I got way bla fix this last up. Come approach us at the lands department and the respective members. If you have issues in your electorates na kind of sem, come look at me na you try and sort him out lo. Wana me make sure our people don't sell their land cheaply for the rest of their lives. Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. Thank you, the good member for Abau.